All right. So welcome to 912. This is our Thursday meet. There is a new exercise up. We're on exercise 4. That exercise deals with blend modes. That one comes from the Adobe Help Desk, just like the last one did with the masking. Just going to talk about how to composite and use, some people call them blend modes. Some people call them transfer modes. Potato, potato, it's the same exact thing. Those are the, when a layer has normal and you drop it down, you got your multiply, your screen, your overlay, and then the other 22 out there. It's just how one layer's pixels will react to another layer's pixels. Some get brighter, some get darker, some get more contrasty, some will just do colors. You can experiment with those, and I really suggest that you do. If you were to say, hey, Will, what does divide do? I have no idea. Just do it. Find out exactly what it looks like. But the big three, in my opinion, would be multiply, screen, and overlay. Those are the ones that I see most on like a day-to-day basis. But beyond that, knock yourself out, come up with some happy accidents, see what you can do. Today, I want to talk about some more brushes and how to create more of a painterly effect in Photoshop, if that's kind of the route that you were thinking about going. And I'll do two two compositions with kind of the same effect. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Melissa.
Could we possibly go over real quick, like maybe the most basic of the brushes? Because I was sick last week.
The
And
most basic of the brushes. What do you mean?
yeah, like I don't know if um there were brushes that you've gone into previously that I've missed.
What we did last Tuesday is, well, let's back up to last Thursday. Last Thursday, we talked about the brush engine, where it is, how to access it, and then we talked about how to manipulate a brush with, like, I'm going to say the static settings. Well, let me show you. All right, I'm going to open up a comp here. I think I'm going to open a comp. Be my downloads. Got 2 to choose from. Yes. All right, so this is one I'm going to work on. And it's that time of the year again. I post to Facebook twice a year, maybe 3 times a year, and it's always right around this time. So we'll be doing this too. But we're going to start with this one. B, brush. This unit is really all about brushes. We could talk about the eraser tool, but the eraser tool is literally just a brush. The eraser tool, the common eraser tool, where did it go? Right here. This does everything that a brush does, only instead of making marks, it will subtract marks. So if you come up with a really cool brush that you like, maybe it's a waffle texture or a dotted series of textures, the eraser tool can do the exact same thing. I don't really use the eraser tool much. I mask more than I use the eraser tool, but it is there. I'm not saying that I never ever use it. I do. It's just, I guess if it comes up, I'll talk about it. But just keep in mind that this tool is identical to the brush. To be fair, the smudge tool is very, very similar to the brush too, in that it has the same properties. So if you have say, a leaf brush and you want to use it as a smudge, you can. I don't really use the smudge that often either, but that's not to say that people don't, or you find a reason for it. I just don't see any demo that would necessitate me bringing it up. If it comes up, I'll definitely show you how it works. But if you use your imagination, it's like, think about if you just took charcoal, rubbed over across a piece of paper. Smudge is just your finger, smears those pixels around, is what it does. Maybe we'll get into it. I don't know. But this is really the big tool. It's your brush tool, and underneath it, you have the pencil tool. I suppose we could talk about it, probably not today. Color replacement, really nobody uses this. There's better ways of using it. Mixer brush, kind of cool, I guess, ish. If you want to create these effects, you really want to use the brush tool. If you get better, if you get good with the brush tool, it does all this stuff. All right, so the brush tool. So what we talked about, Melissa, was F5 will bring up your brush engine. I'm going to go to my brushes, and you're not going to see these brushes. You guys probably don't have rakes and zips and splatters and stuff. Maybe you do. Maybe you get all types of different brushes you've been downloading, and that's awesome. But you'll probably have like these legacy brushes. And if you don't see your legacy brushes, you're going to go to the little sandwich icon and then just choose legacy brushes. These are the ones that came bundled with Photoshop about 3 or 4 years ago. They've since kind of been defunct with this Kyle's brushes, uh, or
Who
you.
fuck's Kyle?
Kyle is, what's his name? Oh, well, let's just Google it real quick. Kyle Baker.
Like, does he have like a free brush download?
He works for Adobe, and yeah, he's one of those guys that like to spice in the pot every so often will come out with a free brush set. Most of his really good brushes, you have to pay for, but I don't know if he's what's the word I'm looking for, where you not freelance, consultant. I think he might be like a consultant. He's a digital illustrator, is what he is. So he comes up with all these brushes for Procreate, Photoshop, uh, Clip Studio. I mean, they're really good brushes. So you
Do you
might
know if brushes you get for Photoshop will work for Procreate?
know
Okay.
two different systems. So what
All
really
right.
stinks is I bought these True Grit textures. Love these brushes. I'm really happy with these. But if I want them for Procreate, I gotta. They don't charge me the full set. They give me a discount, but I'd have to buy them again, and I'm not going to buy them again. So
Okay.
no, the ones by default in Procreate are just fine for me because I really just do a lot of inking in Procreate. I don't do a lot of painting. For that stuff, I'll just use Photoshop. So if you find Kyle's brush set, download them. They're great. Yours will look different because I blew out my default brushes. I didn't like them that much. I feel like the last four versions of Photoshop, the brushes were a lot more stale compared to the legacy brushes. Legacy brushes has some pretty decent stuff in here. So if you want to load these and have yours look just like mine, go to Little Hamburger, go to legacy brushes. It'll ask to like import or append. Either one's going to do the same thing. So just grab them and then you'll see these. So what we talked about was, let's say we get the hard round, go to your brush settings, this little widget right here, the size, how big your brush is, right? You can space it out. You can smash it down to make like kind of a chisel edge. For some reason, there we go. You can rotate it. So if you want that kind of calligraphy look, that's kind of a good way. You can change the X and the Y so they would flip. For this particular brush, it's not going to do a whole lot. But if you've got a brush, say, I don't know, let's see if we can find something.
Is there another way to open the brush settings? Because when I do F5, my screen just went black and white.
Are you on a Mac?
I'm on a no, I'm on a Windows.
Laptop?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, everything that I do, if the hotkey doesn't work, it's under window and it's all alphabetical.
Okay, thank
So
you.
you're looking for brushes. All right, so that's that. I guess flipping something. All right, so here's a butterfly. If I want the butterfly to be upside down, I would flip the Y, I think. And now it's upside down. But flipping X, flipping Y, is that something that happens all the time? No, not really. I might do it today because I've got some splattery, some paint stroke sets that I'm going to use for this thing. And I don't want the paint stroke to look the same every single time. So I might flip it around. I might flip it upside down, trying to like hide the fact that I'm using the same brush over and over and over again. So that's what we covered a week ago. On Thursday, we talked about this right here, dynamics, how to add jitter to a brush, how to add scatter to a brush. Just keep this in mind. If you want to add dynamics, you click on it. It's going to open up its own subcategory. And maybe you guys are already starting to get the idea of like, man, there's a lot of sliders inside of Photoshop. Yeah, there are. There's a lot of sliders. So like if you go into scattering, more sliders. If you go into brush pose, more sliders, transfer, more pose. But I'm stacking all this stuff on top of one another. So just keep that in mind. It's not bad, but if you don't need this stuff, just turn it off. So yeah, the brush tip shape, I guess is technically what it's called. I call them sub shapes or sub tips because to me, it's like a subcategory of the brushes. But yeah, in my opinion, shape dynamics is the most useful one because this adds that we talked about the angle where you can kind of like spin things around. So if you want a bunch of butterflies, but you don't want it to look like a rubber stamp, just that's a really good way of doing it. Size jitter, you know, not all of them are big, not all of them are small. A little bit of difference there. Pretty cool stuff. So explore this, see what you can do. I I don't expect anybody to be a master of the brush engine after 3 weeks. That would be ludicrous. I wouldn't expect anybody to master after 16 weeks. I'm not a master and I've been using Photoshop for like 25 years. So you get familiar and acclimated with the stuff that you like and the stuff that you use either personally or professionally. And the other stuff kind of goes to the wayside. You pick it up when you need to. So kind of explore at your own pace. But I do want you to at least be familiar with where this thing is. And if you did need to modify a brush, at least you'd have a clue of like, okay, well, I don't remember exactly what it's called, but I'm going to go through each one of these things until I, you know, in this little dialog box right here, until I visually see, oh yeah, you know what? I do need a little bit more of these things. So I'll scatter them a little bit and I'm going to up the count. So lots of butterflies. You know, it might take a little bit of picking around, but as long as you're comfortable saying, I know it can be done, it might take me 10 minutes to figure it out. Cool. Well, I don't want to paint a bunch of butterflies, so let's go back to my brushes. Legacy brushes. Pretty cool stuff in here. Some really nice brushes. First things first, before I even get to my brushes. So here's my comp. And I've got a reference image here that came in before I scanned this thing. Unfortunately, my daughter colored on it, so I lost a little bit of information here. But I do have the original photograph, so I can reference where the shadows and the highlights are. What I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to create a black and white expressionistic painting, something that's kind of like splattery and it might be a little bit too far to say nightmarish, but like dreamy. It's not going to be high realism by any state. And I did this technique for a role-playing game years and years ago, and I really liked it. And I've always been kind of jonesing to do something more with it. So now the time has come. We're working on this book, and these are going to be chapter breaks. So the way that I did this was I started with let's see if I can, still got it. Just show you. I think I showed you guys this already. I guess I don't. See if I gotta open. You know, having all of these resources at your fingertips is wonderful as far as, you know, different cloud storage space and Google Drive, but got to be really on the ball when it comes to naming things and remember where they came from. Because, you know, one thing might be saved to the cloud, the other one might be saved locally, one might be your Google Drive, one might be on your like AirDrop. It can get a little bit confusing. So this was the original, actually, this was the original sketch and it just got a little bit away from me. So I had to redo it with a photo reference. So I printed it out and then I went at it with charcoal. And the reason I did it, could I do it from the ground up digitally? Yeah, I could. Would it look as good knowing the way that I work? No. There's something about having tactile material, like physical charcoal and physical paint on a composition that for me at this stage of my design career, it's difficult for me to replicate that stuff. Like it's easier to kind of start with analog material, scan it in, and then work on top of it digitally. But I'm also not confident enough to do it all traditionally. So that's kind of where my skill set is. So here is the composition. We've got a character in the foreground, kind of pleading with the character here in the middle, and then we have two flanking characters on each side. First thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to name this raw. And just like I talked about before, I'm going to lock it up and pretend that it's not there. So Control J to duplicate. I'll turn the raw layer off. I'm going to forget that it's even there. Now I'm working with the raw copy. This part won't be for everybody, but I know that this is only going to be a black and white book. There is color information in here. I don't know if you can see it, but that acrylic paint kind of mixed with the charcoal and it pulled in some kind of blues, right? That won't print. So that's going to be an issue. I mean, it'll print black and white is what it'll do, but I don't want to leave anything to chance. So I'm just going to completely pull out all the color of this. And the way that I'm going to do it is image, adjustment, desaturate. And it should be Control U, Control Shift U. Right there. If you were wondering, could you do an adjustment layer, hue saturation, pull the saturation down? You absolutely could. But why have an adjustment layer hanging out if I don't need it? I know that the color's coming straight out anyway, so I'm just going to pull the saturation out. Before I do, let me zoom in. For those of you that think, like, I don't really see a ton of color, check it out. Control Shift U. I think you saw a lot of color come out just then. So before, after. So there is color in there. All right, next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to crunch the levels down. I want my blacks to be black and I want my whites to be white. So with this layer selected, this is also under image adjustment levels or Control L. It's a pretty good hotkey to remember. Levels come up quite a bit. Here's the way that it usually works. When you're first kind of starting off with Photoshop, you'll probably use brightness contrast. And let me show you what that does. This will control overall that layer's brightness and contrast. So if I want it brighter, I jack up the brightness. Darker, pull it down. Okay. Contrast does the exact same. It will add contrast or take away contrast. So that's cool, kind of. Problem with this is you can't really set midpoints. So like I said, starting off, this is what a lot of people's go to. Like, I need contrast, so we just pull up contrast. Well, let me show you a better way. Hit cancel. Image adjustments. Underneath brightness contrast is levels. To me, this would be your next, like you graduated beyond brightness contrast, and then you move into levels. We've talked about levels before. This valley and peak, this little mountain range here, that's what's called a histogram. You'll see histograms a lot in different programs. So you've got a black slider on the left, a gamma gray slider in the middle, and a white slider on the right. What this does is it says, if you want to adjust contrast, pull your black to the right, darks get darker. Cool. Pull your white to the left, whites get whiter. Cool. Why this is more sophisticated than brightness contrast is this middle slider right here. This will allow you to control the gray point. So you can really kind of tweak what you're looking for. You don't have this type of control in brightness contrast. I'm going to cancel this and go one step further. So we've got beginner, brightness contrast, intermediate, levels, advanced would be your curves. Image, adjustment, curves. There's your histogram again. It's just kind of a different look. Curves will take a minute to really sink in. It's not the easiest thing to work with. Here's what you do. These little nodes on each side, you can click, hold, and drag these. So this is doing the same thing that levels did. Darks get darker. Difference is now I could pull them out by pulling them up. That's something you can't do with levels. Same thing with white. White goes to the right, whites get whiter. But I could also pull it down and whites become darker or to the left like this. So already you've got two areas of influence that you didn't have with levels. But here's what really sets this thing apart. You can plot your own nodes. So if I just click here in the middle, that would be my grayscale. Now my grayscale, I can tweak and add white or black or bend it. I think you can have something to the tune of like 16 nodes. So generally speaking, what a lot of designers will do is they will do what's called a gentle S curve. And that's just a kind of an easy adding of contrast. So I plot a point right here in the middle. I take this slider, I'm going to plot 2 more points, 2 more nodes, boom, boom. And I'm going to make something that looks like an S. Might be a bit too severe. So there's your gentle S curve. So you do preview here. Before, after. This is completely up to taste. Some people like high contrast photos. Some people don't. There's a time and a place. Like if you're doing wedding photography, you probably don't want like really blown out photos. It's going to look kind of weird. But there's other times that you do want high contrast. So just let the project or the client dictate, you know, how much or how little contrast is applied. For this particular project, though, it does need more contrast, in my opinion. It's a little bit too soft. Curves, that's like swatting a fly with a sledgehammer. It's just too much. So levels is just fine. So image adjustment levels or Control L. And I'm just scooch these a little bit closer, get my darks dark, get my lights light. And that looks pretty good. All right, I think I'm about ready to start painting. So first things first, I'm going to start with like kind of a charcoaly brush, and I'm just going to paint in some of the edges that didn't quite get all the way down. And then I'm going to paint in some like long painterly strokes. And I'll probably end with like little splotches of paint, little bits and pieces, little flakes, like splattery type stuff. So here we go. Up first, B for brush, F5. Get rid of this ridiculous butterfly. And let's see what we got. So Kyle has a bonus chunky charcoal. Let's see what that brush looks like. We'll go to the brush settings. So there's the brush right there. How did this thing get created? Well, he's got some shape dynamics on it. It's set to pen pressure. It's got a minimum diameter. It's got a little bit of angle jitter. It's got texture applied to it. It's using this as a reference for texture. It's got some scale, brightness, so forth. It's got dual brush, it's got noise, and it's got smoothing. That's what has created this particular type of brush. All right, well, let's give it a go, see what happens. I think I'm going to paint on a new layer, and then at some point probably merge these 2 layers together. So new layer, get my pen. Now I'm using a stylus. If you're using a mouse, it still works. If you're serious about design or illustration, particularly illustration, you're going to want to invest in like a Wacom tablet with a stylus pen, or a tablet that you can physically draw on, or something like what I'm drawing on right here, which is a Cintiq. So I can just like literally draw on the screen. As I'm painting, move some stuff around here. I might turn my video off just because I'm going to be kind of like leaned in here, and I think it would make a lot of sense to see me anyways. So I'll stop the video. But apparently I lost everybody else, so let's keep that on. Okay. All right. Head off. So here we go. I'm on the layer. I've got a black brush. It's set to 100% opacity. Flow is 86. And I'm just going to make a couple strokes to get an idea of what this thing does. So let's zoom in here. Control plus. All right, it's not bad. It's a little bit too much right now. So I'm going to pull the opacity down. Some good hotkeys to remember when it comes to opacity. The numeric keys along the top of your keypad, not off to the side, not those numeric keypads where it's like 1, 2, 3, next row is 4, 5, 6. I'm talking about the ones along the top, the ones that have the exclamation point, @ symbol, hashtag, that row right there, if you hit those buttons, it will dial down your opacity. So right now you can see my opacity is at 100%. If I hit 4, it drops it down to 40%. So that's a really nice way of just kind of like quickly going through this. All right, so I'm going to go to 6, 60%, and just maybe 7, 70%, and real fast start to block in the stuff that didn't quite get painted in the first time. Now, all the while, I knew I made some mistakes. And if I can, I'm going to start to carve out some of the anatomy that got away from me as well. Now I'm on a brand new layer, so if I make a mistake, I can pretty easy to just chop it off. Or drop the opacity down, or a combination thereof. All right, I'm going to go at a lower opacity, maybe 30%. Pull the shadow up a little bit. And you know what? These highlights on the back really shouldn't be that bright, so I'll go 20% opacity and just pull some of those highlights down some. Now, it's very hard to make a mistake. If you make a mistake, you just paint over it. You know, this is the beauty of digital painting. Do not be alarmed. You make a mistake, you either hit Control Z, or you're on a different layer, you stop it, or just, like I said, paint through it. That's what I can't even remember who it was anymore. Some designer said, just paint through it. Just keep painting, paint over it. You know, smear it around. Who cares? You don't have to wait for this stuff to dry. You know, if we were using oils, oh my God, you make a mistake with oils, I wouldn't even know how to fix it. But I make a mistake
You
with,
paint over it.
I suppose you do, but you
Just scrape it off.
scrape it off. Yeah, there you go. All right, I'm going to flip over to white now, and I'll go up to 50%. I'm going to pull in some of those highlights again. And this
Are
is
you working
it.
with a stylus?
Yeah, I'm on a stylus right now.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, so like here's the rig, folks. So this is a Cintiq, and it's just a big screen. It's a, I don't know. I
Oh,
don't
okay.
know how
It's a
big it is.
Wacom.
But the problem with these things are I'm tethered to a desktop. So I can't go remote with this. The benefit is I've got tons of space and tons of RAM used into this baby. And I got a lot of programs too. So my
that's cool.
iPad over there, it's just got Procreate on it. I keep it super lightweight. And that's just for sketching stuff. You know, it's like it's my digital sketchbook is what it is. I don't really do any finished compositions in there. I use Photoshop for all that stuff. Anyway, so I'm just going to keep kind of going around this thing, finding where I want those highlights. And if I need to, I will consult my reference photo to say, all right, well, I actually went a little bit too far with that. One thing I screwed up was the hands. I think most people will agree. Hands, feet, everyone's got their kryptonite, and a lot of illustrators really struggle with hands. I'm no exception to that. Fortunately, this is a pretty gestural sketch, so if it's messed up, I don't know if I totally care. You know, as long as I think everyone can understand, like, oh, he's got his hand up. And I'll just kind of keep working my way around. So take a look. Here's where it was. I don't know how long that took. Let's say 5 minutes. I'll dump these into a folder. That way we can really compare before and after. So here's my original scan. 5 minutes later, I'm into this. Now, is it done? Is it perfect? No, not even close. But you can see that this process can go pretty fast depending on what you're trying to do. I'm going to work on what I've been loosely referring to as the owl man. This guy's supposed to be wearing like a big bird skull on his head. This cape, this cloakish thing that he's wearing, I really wanted the idea of like taking a palette knife and just creating like real aggressive rips down this thing. Fortunately, I've got a brush that does this really good, so maybe I'll do this on its own layer too. So B, F5, let's see. Let's see where my brushes are. It's not going to be in Kyle's set, I can tell you that. We'll get to splatter here in a second. Legacy, apparently they're not loaded, so let's load them up. I'm going to go to import brushes. Here we go. I got two sets. I cannot, one's real good, the other one's like, okay. So if I get this one wrong, let's see if it's dry paint. Dry brush stroke. Let's see if it's that one. Yeah, these are the ones. Man, I love this set. I use it a lot. Probably too much, really. Check this set out. I'll turn this off, turn these off, and let's just give a generic white background, do a solid color. Perfect. I'll put this in that group as well. That way you can see what these brushes actually look like. All right, we'll do D. Another hotkey, probably worth remembering. D, so my favorite color is blue. And my least favorite color is yellow.
Yeah, yellow sucks.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but if you want to revert back to default brushes, think of default, D for default. If you hit D, you'll go back to black and white. If you want to toggle this right here, what's sitting on top is your foreground brush. What's sitting behind is your background brush. There is a reason for that. If you put on color dynamics, it will oscillate between the two. But if you just real quick on the fly want to say, all right, I'm going to paint with black. Let's go back to 100% opacity. And now that's cool, but I want to paint with white. If you just hit X, you'll flip foreground and background. So you can, flip black to white or blue to yellow or whatever your two colors are, just flip flop. All right, I don't need that. Let's get those layers back on. So how am I going to use this thing? This brush will be fine. It's got the wrong angle, so I'm going to change that. It's too thick, I think. Well, maybe I'll start with that. F5. I'm going to move this to the side so I can see what I'm doing. B for brush. Here we go. And I'm going to change the angle to match the angle of this cloak. So let me rotate this widget. That's pretty close, but it needs to be a little bit more. Yeah, that looks pretty good. All right. X for black. I'm at 100%. Go. Might hit it once again. And this time I'll do 40% opacity just by hitting 4 on the keypad. All right. Looks pretty good.
Wait, so hotkey 4 for 40%. Use like any of the numbers, change the opacity
by increments of 10. So 3 is
Ah,
30,
that's cool.
6 is 60, so forth.
That's cool.
Yeah, it definitely will speed things up for sure. All right, now these like little spiny things that are coming out of his back or her back, it's gender neutral, I suppose. Do this. I'm going to try to match that angle. That's pretty close. But now what I want to do is it's too thick for this thing. So I'm going to take these corner nodes and squish this down. There we go. Now I can see it's not quite at the right angle. That's better. So I'll take this, go up to 80% opacity by hitting 8, and I'll just tap it once. Nice. And I'll keep going with it. There we go. This looks pretty good. Maybe tap a couple of those. Almost. There we go. All right, and then I got one left. I'm going to switch my brush now. I feel like I've used this one quite a bit. So what else I got? I got this big. That's cool. I like it a lot, and I'll probably use it maybe like right around here on the shoulder. Drop the size down. size up and down brushes, that's just your bracket keys. So if you find backspace in the upper right, should be right below minus and plus. There's a left bracket and a right bracket. Those will change the size on the fly. Try to commit that to memory. That's a good hotkey to remember because that's not just Photoshop. That's the same as the
Yeah.
brush in Illustrator. It's the same as the brush in After Effects. So those bracket keys are a little bit ubiquitous with Adobe. All right, so right here, I'm going to hit this thing at maybe like 50% opacity. Just kind of dirtying up the edge a bit. Rotate it a bit. Yeah, like that. And then I'm going to squish this thing down as well. Not quite at the right angle. Close, just a little bit more. All right. Not bad. Let's get a little spongy brush here and I'll tag the eyes up a little bit more. And I need to define that head. Now I'm just gonna have a little bit of fun and just little strokes here and there. Actually, I don't like that brush. Let's go to brushes. I'll go back to that Kyle set. That chunky charcoal seemed to be working okay. Ooh, that's a bit too hot. So let's go down to 40% opacity. And this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about modeling. You know, I know what I want it to look like eventually, but I'm really open and receptive to whatever kind of the program wants to do. That's not to say I don't have full control over it. I do, but you know, what's 40% going to look like? I mean, I guess, but I'm fine with having to go over stuff. That's totally fine with me. Just adding a little bit here, taking a little bit away there. Hit X, bring back that white, and start to pull in a few little highlights here. And some of those long brushes that I was using before, those would be really nice to kind of pull in here and get some of those highlights back out too. I suppose I'm afforded a little bit of leeway in the sense that this type of style is sloppy. So it's okay if things go, you know, I don't, off the rails isn't quite right. That makes it sound like I don't know what I'm doing. You know, I've got a plan in mind, but at the same time, if something happens and I like it, I'll keep it. Whereas, you know, maybe if you're doing something a little bit more stiff, you have to really kind of respect certain parameters of the brushes, the composition. I don't right now. This highlights a bit too much, so I'm going to take that brush, bring it up, and go to like 20% opacity, just tone that down some. Same thing with this mask. Bring a shadow over here. Bring a highlight back in over here. All right, so there are a few issues that I ran into. This stroke is going kind of over the face here. So I said that I don't use the eraser a lot. Well, here I go. E for eraser. And you'll see that when I choose the eraser, my brushes stay the exact same because that eraser can have all of these properties. So if I want a chunky eraser brush, that's what I'm going to choose. Ooh. E. Oh, actually, this one, I take that back. I did make a mistake. Certain brushes, you'll see that these right here actually have a little brush icon on it. Kyle Baker has set these. These are almost like tool presets. These have to be brushes. So let me go into my legacy and I'll just find something that's kind of E. Here we go. Do this. I'll set my own dynamics. Do angle. I don't want the spacing there. It's a bit too spaced out. So this will be my eraser now. Pop that little piece off. I went a little bit too far with some of these edges too, so just kind of cutting out areas. And this would be almost like if you had a maybe like a scraper or sponge or something. Picture all this digital stuff being wet. I'm just kind of knocking some of it out. Add a little texture to the outside. Now, I'll be quite frank with you. This is kind of random. Like I've got an idea of what's getting picked up here, but I don't totally know what's going to happen. So if I make a mistake, I'll just continue to paint. But I do like some of those strokes that I put in there originally, and those got covered up. So I'll just try to bring some of that stuff back. But the face is starting to look a lot better. I like that. All right, so that's where I'm at now. So let's take a look. That's where we were, and that's where we are. So it's really starting to come together, in my opinion, a lot more. I'm pretty happy with it. So I'm just going to keep going with the forward momentum. It's up to you. You could keep this group alive as is. And if it's your first digital painting, you probably should. You should probably work with layers. But and I'm not bragging. I'm not great by any stretch of the imagination. I look at really good concept artists. I'm like, oh my God, it's like maybe one day I'll get there. But I am to the point where I don't need all these layers anymore. So I'll just take that whole group and I'm going to hit Control E as an echo, and I'm just going to merge it down. You know, if I make a mistake, I'll just paint over it. I don't care. So go back to B for brush. Paint some of these dark areas back in here. That's too hot, so going down to 50%. And same as before, you know, I'll go back to those dried paint strokes. The one thing I did want to bring in was the splatters. I'm not going to get into the detail of these background characters. They don't really need much detail. If you're familiar with what a technique called noodling, where it's kind of like a continuous contour, where you just drawing and you're drawing and you're drawing and you're drawing. I find that digital painting is great for noodling. One problem that you can run into traditionally is you just build up too much material and it just kind of falls apart. Whereas with digital, you know, it's just a matter of like, okay, well, either I'll erase it or I'll use white on top of it, or I'll use a color on top of it. That's great. I flipped foreground and background color and nothing happened. And it's because both of my foreground and background are black right now. So let me hit D to reset those. X. I want to peel in some little kind of specular highlights here in the eyes. Carve out a bit more definition in this mask. It's like I kind of want it to look kind of spooky, but not too spooky. Huh. Maybe a big shadow underneath the hat. And the hat would probably be black. You know, I had said earlier that everyone's got their foil when it comes to, you know, hands, feet, whatever. I don't know what it is, but I cannot wrap my head around collared shirts. Like
collared shirts.
Yeah, I like it. That's my thing. Like, and of course, the book that I work on is a Western period piece. Everybody has a collared shirt on, so there's a lot of GQ magazines laying around and a lot of Time Life books of what those weird shirts look like. All right, so I'm gonna kind of pump the brakes on this right now. I think you guys are kind of getting the idea of how you can use different types of brushes to build up a painterly composition like this. I did want to end with that splatter brush just to give a little bit more oomph, lack of a better word. BF5 brushes. Here's my splatter. I got several splatter brushes. These are very handy. Sometimes I'll use them right out of the gate to stock. Sometimes I'll set a dynamic to them. So like this ink pop right here. This is at 30% opacity. Let's do something a little bit hotter. Let's do 100, or let's do 70. What else we got here? You don't want to go too, I don't want to go too far with it. I feel like if you really hit this too much, it ends up looking a little bit hokey. Like here's a great example. There's a graphic novel called Witches, and the artist is really good. Jock is I mean, not only digital artist, but traditional artist. I mean, he's fantastic, but it's just like he like became a parody of himself on that book for some reason. Like every page has just all these textures, and it's pretty painfully obvious of like what's going on there. All right, so just a couple of these. Go to my brush settings. I don't want to recycle the same angle over and over, so let's come at it. Lower opacity, 40%. Over here, a couple there. And then I'll also do it with white. We're going to set those dynamics. We'll do angle. That way it's not always in the same spot twice. All right, with not too much work into it before, after. But hopefully you guys are getting the sense that I couldn't have gotten to this place if it wasn't for a solid background, a solid, like, if it was a house, we'd call it the bones. Like the bones of the house are, they're in pretty good shape. So we're just kind of working on the facade at that point. And it's starting to look a little bit more the way that I want it to look. Now, it's not unreasonable to say I might print this out and go back with another pass of traditional materials, scan that back in, hit it again digitally. I'm going to keep doing whatever I need to do in order for me to look at it and be like, it's done. So that could be all digital. It could be 50-50. Who knows? But that is a technique that I really like doing as far as digital illustration goes. Save it. Actually, save it as a PSD. I don't know where you guys are saving to. If you're saving locally or to the cloud, I usually do both. Right now, this was a PDF, and I want a PSD, so I'm going to save to my cloud. And I've got a folder just for this called Owlman, and let's call it page 1. That's what it is. Close it out. Did anybody have any
Reminds me of
questions?
Wicker Man, your drawing.
What's that?
It reminds me of Wicker Man.
Yeah. I mean, obviously by what you're seeing right here, I'm a big horror fan. Yeah, like 70s horror to me was like just some of the best stuff. And yeah, like Wicker Man, that whole aesthetic, that kind of like just weird. Well, we watched Blair Witch a couple nights ago, and who would have thought that just a couple sticks tied together could be terrifying, and yet it was. So like, go figure. You can get a lot of mileage out of something that is not, it doesn't have to be a monster with drooling fangs and things like that. If you can make someone use their imagination, whatever they're going to conjure up is going to be way scarier than whatever monster you can put on screen. All right, for something like this, I don't have a lot of time. I got to have this thing done by tomorrow because it is Friday the 13th. So one thing I need to do is I need to extend the canvas down. So that's a pretty easy thing to do. Go to image, canvas size. Now here's the thing about canvas size. If I was to say, like right now it's 9 inches tall. It's about 9.2 tall. If I want it to be, if I want like 3 or 4 more inches on the bottom, so let's just go 13, choose OK. It's going to add to the top and the bottom. I could just use the move tool and move it up, but that's not the best way of doing it. So I'm going to Control Z that. If you want just the bottom or top or left or right, you need to anchor it. So I'll go back to image canvas size. Now I'll do 13, but I'm going to anchor the top right here. So now it's going to extend those 3, 4 inches on the bottom. There we go. Probably could use a little bit at the top. So maybe I'll go back to image canvas size. Give myself a little bit of padding. So I'll anchor the bottom and I'll just add 14. That looks pretty good. That's probably pretty decent crop. This was a different demo that I did for Illustrator where we were talking about doing vector portraits. So I took a photograph and I posterized it in Photoshop. And then I used the pen tool to just like loosely find the color or shadow shapes. That said, it's got transparency, which I don't want. It's got a pink hand that has never been filled in, which I don't want. And I want to add more painterly effects to this. And again, I don't have a lot of time. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use an adjustment layer, solid color. We'll start with black and let's move it underneath that layer. Okay. I suppose that reads well enough. The blues are getting a little bit lost, but it's already a dark composition, so that's fine. As far as the hand goes, here's kind of a cool effect. There's the transparency. Anytime you see a checkerboard grid, that means that there's transparency there. If I just want to paint on the existing pixels and not anywhere else, let me give you a for instance. So B for brush, F5 to bring up my brushes, tip shape, and let's just get a, actually I'm going to get my tool presets out because I got some brushes already lined up for this. We'll get my anchor. All right. Those magenta lines, those, I might actually even have a newer version of this. I don't know, but I'm not going to go looking for it now. I don't want those to be magenta. That looks like Tron or something. I don't want that. So I want these to be darker, and I don't want to do this. I don't want to sit here and like trace on top of it because that's going to take too long, and I might mess up. So don't want that. So how can I just paint on the layer itself? If you were thinking, what about a clipping mask? You would be right, but you don't even need a clipping mask. Maybe you've noticed these buttons down here before. Most of you have probably messed around with lock. This is a global lock where it will lock down everything. You can't paint, you can't erase, you can't move, you can't delete. It's locked up. So that's just a global lock. I hope I didn't accidentally do that. No. You got a few other options here. You got an artboard lock, move lock, a lock image pixels, and a transparency lock. I don't think we'll talk about, we certainly won't talk about auto nesting artboards. I don't know if we'll talk about the other two, maybe. But this one right here, the lock transparency pixels, that's what I'm going to use. What this does is it says, okay, you can paint on it, and you can move it, and you can erase stuff. But when you paint, you can only paint on pixels. So anything that's not there, that's transparent, you won't paint on it. So if I click this, I wish there was a different lock icon. I kind of wish it was this image, this little like Purina dog chow image. I wish that showed up over here because a lot of people look at it and be like, oh, well, it's locked. True, but it's a pixel lock. And if I did a, what is this one actually called? image. If I did an image lock, they all look the same. So it'd be cool if there was just like a different icon to say, oh, it's not actually a global lock, it's, you know, this or whatever, but there's not. So you got to just pay attention to the lock icon. So pixel lock, now check it out. I'll turn this back on. Now I don't want red, but I'm going to choose red because it will show up. You'll see what I'm talking about. Or let's do green, bright green. All right, so I'm going to paint, and you'll see that nothing's painting until I hit image. So if you got pixels on the page and you just want that painted, that's your transparency lock. Control Z. So I just real quick need to fill this in with anything. Let's grab that gray color for his skin. B for brush. Okay. Now underneath it, because it's not quite filled in, let's create a new layer. I will make a different color, maybe a little bit darker gray, and I'll add a little bit of blue to it. And again, not really caring too much. Let's go to 100% opacity. All right, so I got something of a hand there. Got to kind of tune this little piece up, and I'll deal with that in a second. But here's really what I want to do. I want to use some of those painterly brushes to bring down some of this information. And maybe I'll not use quite so hard of black or gray. That way we can see a little bit better, maybe. All right, so on that layer, I, B, I just sampled. I is going to be your eyedropper tool. It'll sample whatever color you pick up. Let's get that.
Do you have to do control I or just hit I?
Just I. F5 to spin my widget around. That looks good. I'll make it a little bit smaller. I'm hitting at 100% opacity. So let's see what happens. All right. So here's what's going on. I'm just taking this as if I painted it and then just with wet paint, just pulled it down. Now I want to switch brushes. I don't want that same brush over and over again. Maybe I'll get the splattery guy. Running down. More splatters here. Grab this gray. We got some more splatters. I'm just kind of building in because I don't want it completely hollow like that. Let's find those dry brush strokes again. Here we go. Take this one. I'll put this one on a layer below too. And I'm just kind of painting underneath each layer. Spin this widget. Change the color a little bit. It's good to occasionally change your colors. You don't want the same color over and over and over again. It looks phony. I'm going to change the angle so it's kind of matching where the elbow is. So I'm going to spin this a bit. That hand is pretty gnarly. So maybe on top, I'll kind of hide some of the stuff that I didn't quite get to. This color here, B for brush. This time I'll go at low opacity, like 30%. F5, spin it. Now I'm going to try to match the knuckles a bit. Right, scooch these in. Let's turn that background on and see what's this thing's looking like now. So definitely has got more of a swampy, painty look. Still got that little magenta handle that I need to sort out, but I think everyone can kind of see where it's going. Of course, there's got to be like, some blood pops in there. No problem. That's easy. I've got those splatter brushes. So F5. One set I do want to show you before we stop though is a rake brush set. If you can find these, this was real I mean, I guess it's kind of still popular, but it was real popular 7 years ago, 8 years ago. I mean, like every illustrator was using rakes to define the borders of their image. I'll show you what that looks like, but let's hit the old splatters. Splatter. I'll do this on a layer on top because I don't want too much. Like my favorite type of stuff like this is not in your, like, I just don't want like blood falling everywhere. Just a couple subtle little spots would be great. This one maybe I'll put below everything except for that adjustment layer. And this might just be to kind of carve out where that machete is. Bring this one back to the top. And might as well just go up. Let's go 100% opacity and see what's happening. Ooh, no, that's what I'm talking about. That's just too loud. So instead of that, let's pull down like deep, dark, something like that. And that's how I would go about something like that. As far as the rakes go, let me show you what that looks like. I don't think I need something that large. These are pretty cool. Imagine if you took a comb and you dipped it in paint and you painted with it. That's what a rake is. And if you've got a stylus pad, they will react to the angle that you're twisting. So these are a lot of fun. Of course, you can run the risk of kind of overusing them if you're like me, because it's like a new toy. You get a new toy, it's like, oh, I'm going to use it for everything. You be careful. But as far as like just pulling out little bits and pieces, I think it's a lot of fun. Even something like right here where, I need a little bit of a highlight. Yeah, like, and again, I'm not here to say like that's awesome, make yours look like this. In fact, you might look at it and be like, you went too far, it looks terrible. You'd be right, I guess. But I don't know, I just like the texture that it adds. I'm gonna open up that Owlman one more time because that was something I wanted to add into this. So let's get the white B since I got my rakes out. It's a bit too big right now, so they're also kind of fun to use as erasers. Like if I get a bit too much on there, I'll just use this to rip it apart. Then I'll go back. And this rake set's got, I mean, it's got tons. Like, here's a graphite rake. I only end up using like 2 or 3 of them. Oh, hey, what's up? Something's going on. Ah, I'm running low on RAM. Anytime that you see the brush lag like that, you know that something's up. I think it's the video. It's trying to capture the video at the same time. So my system's running a bit slow. But yeah, it's much better in my opinion. When you zoom in, you can really start to see it kind of fall apart though. So, save it. Close it. I need to keep working on this. It's not good right now. All right. Well, I got a couple comps open. I don't really have a whole lot for you right now. Let's see. Project was introduced on Thursday, so you're about a week into the project. You should definitely have your composition created as far as like just the document. You should have what you want to do plotted out. It should kind of be blocked out. You should have kind of a color scheme in mind. You should be experimenting around with brushes. So I can't say that you're at the 30 to 50% mark, but keep in mind, these are going to be due in 2 weeks. So if nothing else, you should be about 1/3 of the way done. On that note, I would rather you guys be working tonight. Does anybody need to see anything, or do I need to answer any questions? Do you want me to run any more demos? What do you think would be the best use of your time? Don't bounce out right now though. If you're like, I'm good, I just want to work. I need to take attendance still. So does anybody need anything?
Can you show me a clipping mask demo?
You want to see what?
A clipping mask demo? Because I was thinking about masking off like an area and painting underneath it.
And do you have an example in mind? You want to show your screen?
Let me see if I can find something.
Okay. I'm gonna
All right.
stop. I'm gonna stop sharing. Actually, I'll keep recording. Go ahead, Joe. See, here, I'll do this. When I do clipping mask demos, we'll just start with a piece of paper.
Okay, so maybe you can get the sense of like what I'm thinking of. Here, let's see if I can share.
Okay. Here, let me
Disable
stop sharing
participant. Yeah,
and let
you
me
gotta
allow
allow
you to share.
sharing.
All right, you should be good to share.
All right, so you see this piece by Heliobray?
Yes.
All right, so like I was thinking about masking off areas and then coming in with like different brushes and like different kinds of strokes like underneath masked areas.
Okay, gotcha.
I thought like a clipping mask might be good to create this kind of squared off stroke.
Sure.
And then like kind of create like, I don't know if it's vector or how it remembers clipping mask, but like it kind of like allows you to like chisel out an area and then you can kind of paint underneath it or like
Yeah, I
only
get you.
through that area.
Sure. Okay.
So that's what I was thinking.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, let me know if you can like kind of show me something because I'm like, I really want to work in that style where it's like painterly and it's got a lot of strokes.
Sure. So let me share my screen. So there's a photograph in there for starters. So let's open a photograph. So let me find a photo that I think we'll try to find a portrait-ish photo.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that I'm recording, the screen lags a bit much, so just hang tight. It will right itself. So we'll go to photography. We're looking for some portraits. All right. So let me just open this in Photoshop.
Yeah, so I guess I'm trying to mix like a drawing in Procreate with like some painterly effects in Photoshop. So yeah, I kind of want to like learn a little bit more about Procreate and like try out my hand in that, but also, you know, do some of the techniques that we're learning in Photoshop kind of simultaneously.
Yeah. Okay, so here's a portrait. So one thing that you're gonna want to do is to do the effect that you just saw is we need to remove the model from the background in order to like accurately do the clipping mask.
Huh.
So
All right.
we'll
Select subject.
what's up? Yeah, I would totally select subject, but because my system is bugging out right now, let's see, let me close this out. I'm just gonna do a real crappy wand
Object
select,
select.
and then I'll just delete that background out. So definitely take your time more than I just did, but you can Control D. All right, so let's give it a background. Someone shout out their favorite color.
Purple.
Oh,
Okay, purple. Is
Oh no, it's yellow again.
actually, you know what? I feel bad now. Let's do yellow.
Oh no.
You know, like not for nothing. This is my wife, and her favorite color is yellow. So she'd be very happy that yellow's being picked right now. So,
Don't tell me she made you paint the bedroom yellow.
and well, she can paint it whatever color she wants. So I don't know.
Okay.
Happy wife, happy life. I hate that expression, but it's kind of true. All
Yeah,
right,
it is.
so let's do a couple things here. I'm going to show you that technique, but now that we're kind of on this tangent, I think this is worth exploring too. So, one cool lesser known or lesser known is not right. An adjustment layer I don't see a lot of people play around with is a gradient map, and I think these things are awesome. Uh, I would imagine most people in here know what a gradient is. If I was to put a gradient on, let's go to right here, adjustment layers, gradient. Yeah. So this is a gradient. Not a great gradient, but it is gradient. All a gradient is going from one color to another color, even if that color is transparent. You know, it could go from black to nothing, or in this case, it can go from orange to yellow to orange. If you guys want to know more about gradients, we can talk about this. I don't know if tonight's the best time, but I can make a note if you guys hit me up next Tuesday and you're like, explain gradients. I'll go through these things in crazy detail. They're pretty handy. But so that's what a gradient is. It's just going from one thing to another. A gradient map is similar. The difference is instead of going from one color to another color, it will take the value of pixels of an image and go from one color to another color based off of the value of the pixels. Now, me saying that, I mean, that almost even confused me. So I'm sure everyone's like, what? Check this out. We'll go to adjustment layer and then second from the bottom, gradient map. Now, at first it's like, well, it's black and white, big deal. Just wait for it. We're going to click the gradient ramp. All right, so let's do this. The dark pixels would be underneath her chin. The light pixels would be like on the bridge of her nose. So let's say that I want my dark pixels to be in the purple family. Here's my dark pixels. I'll take this and say, all right, dark pixels, you be purple. Okay. So right now it's almost like a, not sepia, but a monochromatic. Check this out. I want my light pixels to be in the yellow family. And you can make images like that. Maybe you don't like that look. Maybe you're like, oh, you know, it's interesting, but I really thought that the dark pixel should be dark blue. Or maybe light blue. Heck, who knows? And then you can kind of create like a posterized inverted effect. So this has a lot of applications unto itself. Now, it's altering the background. So here's a clipping mask. Layer is right above it. Right click, choose clipping mask. Now that adjustment layer is only targeting whatever's right below it. So then I could say, all right, well, I like the background, but it needs to be a darker yellow. And now I'm somewhere around.
Okay.
Okay. But let me show you how to paint, not just clip an adjustment layer, which is
Yeah,
handy.
that's what I'm interested in.
Sure. So let's do this. We'll use some rakes and that image that you showed me, they're using what's called zips, which are zip tones. I got a zip tone set. I use it a lot. So I'll do that. first things first, I want to jazz up this background a little bit. So make a new empty layer here. B for brush. Let's get those dry brush strokes out again. And let's go a little bit zany here. Let's sample that color, but let's do something a bit different. And that's working pretty good, but maybe a couple lighter colors. And let's do chunkier brush.
So you hit clipping mask on the adjustment layer.
I'm not even, yeah, the adjustment layer's got a clipping mask, but right now I'm painting underneath her. So I'm just kind of painting out the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe I'll hit it with those rakes seem to work pretty good. I like that. So let's get a fade here. And I'm going to use the rake to kind of just define a bit more of this area. All right. Now let's use a clipping mask to kind of like go into this layer here. So I'm going to make a new layer. Ultimately, I'm going to clip this down, but not just yet. So you can see what the clipping mask is going to do. So maybe I'll start with a rake. Grab this blue and let's do like a brighter blue. All right, so right now you can see that those strokes are kind of going outside of the boundaries of where she is. But if I right click and choose create clipping mask, it's going to bind it to the transparency of just her. So now it's just sitting on her, which I don't
Okay.
really like that. So Control A, delete that. Let's try some zips, see what that looks like. All right, I've got a round and a straight. I'll do the round. I'm going to unclip this real quick. Release clipping mask. So I'm going to do a big blue here. So that's what this brush looks like. I'll build up the density a bit. So you see that,
Okay, cool.
right? So all a zip is, folks, it's just a series of dots, and they usually get big to small. It's like it's an old printing trick. You know, like think about like the printing press. It couldn't print gradation. You know, it was just either black or it was white. So the way that they would fake grayscale is it would just be a series of little dots. Look at money sometime, you know, like really look at George Washington's face. That's not, you know, going from this color to this color. It's just the lines get closer together. That's a zip, really. So got the zip, definitely covering her up and a little bit more. But if I clip that by right clicking, create clipping mask, now it's just stuck to her. Now it's covering up too much of her face. So I could either on this layer, put a mask on it. And I could paint this as a mask. I could use this brush as a mask and kind of like reverse it, pop her eye back out. So you can see those
Oh
dots,
yeah.
right?
Oh, weird. Yeah. Okay.
These are what's called moire patterns. You just Google moire patterns. You guys have seen it before. It's usually like on old broadcast TV, where if you have a pattern, see it a lot in like lacy material. Think of like tulle from wedding dresses. I didn't know what that word meant until like 10 years ago, by the way. Tulle is like meshy material. And when you photograph that, sometimes it will create a moire. It's like this weird vibrating pattern, but it's just caused by like overlapping zips that go at odd angles. And if it's moving, like on broadcast TV, it just makes like a wavy effect, which is
Okay.
kind of weird, kind of cool, but you usually don't want it. So if you got something like this, that's how you would paint with clipping masks into just a particular area. I could also,
Okay.
you know, these strokes right here, they have transparency to them, meaning like they're
So
not
what defines the shape of a clipping mask?
whatever's underneath it.
Whatever's underneath it. Okay.
So if whatever's underneath it has any type of transparency around it,
Mm.
will only be on the opaque areas. So for
Okay.
take a look at this. You see these strokes back here, these mustard yellow strokes?
Yeah.
right? So I'm gonna make a new layer on top. And I'm gonna paint this. Okay, it's going everywhere because I just painted it, but if I clip it to the layer below it, take a look at what happens. Now it's just in those paint strokes.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Okay, cool.
Got it?
Yeah, so you're just like right clicking. Wait, how did you do that? Like it looks like the one layer has the blue strokes on it and the layer underneath it has like little yellow strokes.
Yep.
So like are you just right clicking on the top layer?
So here's what's going on. I made a bunch of sloppy paint strokes.
Yeah.
You know, that's what this layer is. It's just a bunch of, it could be anything. It doesn't have to be paint strokes. It could be here. Let's get a normal brush. This would be a brush that you guys have. Legacy brushes, hard round. We'll even change the color so we can see it a bit better. But it's on the same layer. That's important. Okay, so this is what this layer looks like. It's got some painterly brush strokes. It's got some rake brush strokes, and then it's just got a common, what do we call, hard round brush stroke, right? I'm gonna make a new layer on top. It won't be clipped by default. Now I'll just use that same hard round and let's do a garish color so we can see it. Big bright green. All right, so it's just sitting right on top of it, covering it up until, and it needs to literally be on the layer right on top. You right click and choose create clipping mask. And now it's bound to the transparency below it.
Okay. I see.
Got it?
Yeah, no, I got it. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to like play around with it a little bit to really master it.
For sure. For sure. But yeah, that's how that was done. I think what they did is they've got several different layers of different paint strokes and a photograph, and then they just clipped different things on top of those, different paint strokes on top of different paint strokes, zips on different paint strokes, whatever.
Very cool.
Yeah, you can have a lot of fun with it. I've seen a lot of digital artists get quite a bit of mileage by just playing around with those type of effects. Okay, so I'm just now looking at the messages. I apologize. And I think I'm going to stop recording right now.